Abram's descendants are the ones who have the right to have this land, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we do genetic testing on everybody in the land and find out who Abram's descendants are? It's really simple. We've cracked the human genome. We can do that. Why don't we do that? Would you be against doing that?
I have no idea what that would prove. I mean,
Really?
maybe it would be.
What do you mean? It would prove who Abram's descendants are and who has a right to live here and who doesn't, according to the theology that you yourself just explained. And so I'm very confused as to why we don't do that. If you believe the theology that you've just explained to me.
Would we do that all over the world?
Well,
and everybody
this is the only country in
Brits?
the world that you've said has this covenant with God, that this people have a moral and legal right to the land.
What about people who convert to Judaism? Would they have a right? There are converts to Judaism, so
you just told
they
me,
can make aliyah. They may not have
You've just
DNA.
told me that it doesn't matter. You told me moments ago, I'm trying to keep track,
Okay.
that it doesn't matter whether or not you believe in God or whether or not you practice Torah Judaism or Rabbinic Judaism, which is something else that I don't even know if we should, I don't even know what that means, but it doesn't matter whether you're, quote, a religious Jew or not. What matters is that you are part of the Jewish people to whom God gave this land that extends from the Nile to the Euphrates. And so if you believe that, wouldn't you want to know with a burning passion who those people are? And because of science, we can now know who those people are. So why aren't we finding out?
But the
I'm
point
comfortable with secular nation states where it's none of this is done on the basis of blood. I'm uncomfortable with that, I'll just say that.
But there are people who may not have bloodlines, but who have converted to Judaism. Are they going to be able to live here? Are you going to kick them out?
By your standards, they can't live here.
Welcome to the We B.i.G channel, where we believe in God. Do you? I'm Brother Ra'ai, and we're back with another We B.i.G broadcast, and today we got a good one. So I came across this video of Tucker Carlson and Mike Huckabee, and they're getting into some information that really we've been talking about for years, right? So Tucker Carlson, well, let me back up. Mike Huckabee is the United States ambassador to Israel. Now, Tucker Carlson has an interview with him, and about halfway through the interview, they get into Israel, their right to that land, who they are, and he goes and he corners him. He starts asking him questions that and bringing out information that we've been saying for years. For years, when I say we, I mean the Israelite community, right? For years, since the '60s, we've been telling people that the Jews that are the people that claim to be Jews are the synagogue of Satan, written of in Revelation. I want to say 2 and 9, right? You know, I know the blasphemy of those who say they're Jews and are not, but are the synagogues of Satan. And so, so he questions them about that. He drills them about that. You know, how do they prove that they are the people of the book? How do they trace their lineage back to the Bible? Okay. Where do they get the authority for that land? If they're claiming that the Bible gives them the authority to that land, then they need to be able to prove that they are those people, and they can't prove it. And this is like on a political level where this is coming out to the forefront. You had Candace Owens kind of go back into the history and show that the people that's in the land of Israel today are not the people of the book. Okay, and what that means is, if they are not the people of the book, then who are the people of the book? There's a book written by a man named Arthur Koestler, right? Now, Arthur Koestler wrote a book called The 13th Tribe, I want to say 1976. And essentially, he's saying, because if you don't know, according to the Bible, there's 12 tribes of Israel, okay? And Judah became the predominant tribe. This is where who we know as Jesus the Christ came through the lineage of Judah. And Israel, what they call Israel today, belongs to those people, to the same bloodline that Christ came through. So you had, you know, Benjamin, Judah, and Levi predominantly in Jerusalem during the time of Christ. Even, you know, the Apostle Paul says he was from the tribe of Benjamin. So this is who was predominant there, right? And the people that's in Israel today cannot trace their heritage back to these people. and it's going to get interesting in this conversation. But I think Bibi Netanyahu is the prime minister of Israel. His people can't trace their lineage back to the people in the Bible, right? So what gives them the right? So you have somebody like Gamal Abdel Nasser, who was the president of Egypt in the 1950s, I want to say. He said that the Jews will not live in peace in Israel because they left black and came back white. Right? So you have these things. We have Hebrewism in West Africa. We have from Babylon to Timbuktu, where the history has been shown that that in 70 A.D. when Rome forced the Jews out of Jerusalem, and they fled into the Africas, what people call the Africas, and into the West Africas, and they were the slaves that went to America came from the West Africas, right? So there's a lot of interesting information that would at the bare minimum suggest that the so-called Negro African American are the people of the book, or the people of the Bible. And we get lost because we don't have a history. We can't trace our history. We can't trace our heritage, right? Some people can trace it back to the Igbos, that's in Africa, in certain countries. Some people can trace their heritage back to certain countries in Africa. And then a lot of those countries keep the customs of the Bible. They circumcise on the 8th day. They separate themselves from their wives when the wife is on her menstrual cycle, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go into all of it. However, this interview is, I have to say, somewhat vindicating, because people didn't believe us. People thought we was talking crazy. It was nonsense. And especially in the Christian community, they just want to dismiss this and sweep it under the rug. And and I'm not caught up in color, but the truth is the truth. The Bible, Christ said that you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And I'm hoping to make some people free today. And it's not even me; it's just the information that's gonna come out in this, right? So this is gonna be interesting, man. We're gonna watch this. So I'm gonna play the video. I didn't say it enough. I talked enough. I'm gonna play the video, and I'm gonna pause it from time to time, chime in here and there. I have to do that so it's not copyright. And but we're gonna get into it, man. This is gonna be interesting. It's gonna be fun. So check this out. And if you have comments, if you have questions, thoughts, and anything, leave it in the comments. Also, I'm going to put in the description, I'll put the link to the full podcast, or for this full interview that Tucker Carlson did. Like I said, it came out a couple of days ago, I think, maybe 2 or 3 days ago. So let's get into this, man. This is going to be interesting. This is going to be very interesting, right? So here we go.
I hear people say, those who bless Israel will be blessed. I know it's a reference to Genesis. I don't understand the connection between that concept and modern Israel and the geopolitical world. And so I'm going to stand back and ask
let's first define, because, from my days as a debater in high school and college, one of the things I knew, you didn't start the debate till you defined the terms.
Amen.
Let's define the terms.
Thank you.
What is,
Thank you.
What is a Christian Zionist? What does that mean to you? What does it mean?
I don't know. It's the people who call me a Nazi for asking what Israel means. I mean, that's kind of I don't even know.
But here's the point. If you say a Christian Zionist is a person who has a brain virus and is guilty of heresy, that's a pretty big charge.
I know. I shouldn't have made it. I made it out of anger and ignorance.
So,
and I'm
Christian, I think we can agree, is somebody who follows Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
Has a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, believes in his death, burial, resurrection, has repented of one's sins, and have accepted him as one's Savior. Would that be fair?
Amen.
Christian. Define that. Zionist. A Zionist simply means a person who believes that the Jewish people have a right to have a homeland where they have security and safety. Did you believe that the Jews have a right to live in Israel? Do you believe that Jews have a right to live in Israel? That would be a Zionist. That's all a Zionist is.
I have a million questions about what all of those terms mean.
Yeah.
But conceptually, I wish Israel no harm. I don't want to see them
You want them to have a place where they can live? with safety and
let
security?
So I saw this recently in an extremely telling exchange between the lieutenant governor of Texas, who I know and I've always liked, and a woman I don't know, never met, who's on the Religious Liberty Commission or something. And she said, I'm a Catholic, but I'm not a Zionist. And they had this ferocious exchange. And he kept saying, and everyone on the panel seemed to keep saying, you have to believe in Israel's right to exist. Which I've never kind of questioned, just for the record, but it did raise two questions I think are really important. And I hope you'll answer them. One is, where does that right come from?
I would say it comes from, essentially, you could say it comes from the Bible. I would say that it does. But it comes also from a long iteration of historical precedents going to the Balfour Declaration of 1917. It comes from the League of Nations 1927. It comes from the United Nations 1947,
Right.
the Declaration of Independence of the Israel State in May of 1948. They were immediately attacked. They won the war. They were attacked again in 1956. They won the war. They were attacked again in 1967 by 5 countries. They won the war. They were attacked again in 1973 in the Yom Kippur War. They won the war. The point is, does Israel have a right to exist? They also had wars in 1982 in Lebanon. They've had the intifadas, 2 of those. They've had
Lebanon
war
again in 06. I was there. No, I'm very familiar with the modern history of the state.
Okay.
Pretty familiar, I think. And I've been
But a
here.
Zionist simply means somebody who believes that Israel has a right to exist. Now, the question is, do you believe Israel has a right to exist?
I guess. I mean, I want Israel
Yes.
to exist. Well, no, but I want to know what that means. So, like, do other countries have a right to exist?
Well, they do exist.
Do they have a right to exist? You keep saying Israel has a right to exist, and I want to know what other countries
They have a
right.
legal right because every international body in the last 100 years has said the Jewish people have a right
I
to
understand.
their
You explained
indigenous
it, but
homeland.
my question
So that's a
is,
legal right.
What
Do
other?
they have a biblical right? I would say that yes, but you may say they don't.
I don't know. I'm actually
Okay.
sincerely interested in finding out what you mean by a biblical right. But first, to the legal right, does any other country on the planet have the same right that Israel has to exist?
Well, you could say, does Jordan have a right to exist? When it was Transjordan and the Brits came and divided up the Middle East and they gave some land to Jordanians and they gave some land to the Saudis and they gave some land to various Middle Eastern countries, and it was all carved up. And the French gave Lebanon its right to exist. Do they have a right to exist?
Do they?
Well, why not? Why
Okay.
not?
So that's my. So
Yeah.
every
Does
country.
the U.S. have a right to exist?
I'm asking you.
Okay, and I'm telling you, I think the U.S. has a right to exist.
Okay.
We came here, we came there. We're
Right.
in Israel now talking. But does the U.S. have a right to exist? Does anyone question whether we have a right to exist?
I don't. Yeah, but I, of course, I'm for America. You know.
Good for you.
But so every current country on the map has the same right to exist that Israel has. Is that what you're saying?
I think what we're saying is that when a country has established itself and it is following international law, it has been deemed by numerous bodies that it is indigenous to its homeland, as Israel is. This is its homeland. It goes back 3,800 years to the time of Abraham. It's not that
Well, hold on. Now I'm
the
getting
Jewish
confused.
people just showed up here in 1948 and said, we're going to have some land.
Hold on.
here."
So those are two different tracks, and I just want to make sure that we separate them so I understand each one separately.
All right.
So you're saying there's the modern legal framework, and so you said a country that abides by international law has a right to exist.
I would say that that is a part of its existence.
Would the inverse be true that a country that does not abide by international law forfeits its right to exist?
Not necessarily if it has the capacity to stay and make its case known. But there have been Jewish people in this land,
but that's
in
a
this
separate-
very land, for 3,800 years.
Okay. So
Yeah, all right. So this is something that I want you to pay attention to. Because now he said this claim, right? So it's been Jewish people in the land of Israel for 3,800 years. And that's just not historically true. And then later in the interview, Tucker's going to call him out on it. But just make a note of that. He said that Jewish people now, and we always we kind of differentiate between Jews and Jewish, right? And Tucker's going to press him on some things. He's going to start trying. And you see right now, he's already avoiding answering questions. Just answer the question. But he's doing a political thing. But just pay attention to what he says and then how he kind of contradicts and then we're going to get into a lot of things that's just simply not true. But I'm just glad that this is happening on such a public scale. All right, but check it. Here we're going to get right back to it. Here we go.
But you're saying as the modern nation state with borders and a military and a Knesset and just all the kind of trappings of a modern country, all of which I support, that country has, every country on the planet has the same right as Israel to exist because it does exist. Is that what you're saying? I'm just trying to understand the concept here.
Well, I think what we're trying to get to is Christian Zionism, and you've taken this way off the road here.
I don't know that I have. I don't mean to. Christian Zionism is a separate thing, but I just keep hearing people say Zionism is the belief
But that's the fundamental argument that's going on. Does Israel have a right to live in their indigenous, ancient, historical land, a land that has been affirmed throughout international organizations?
And see, that's the issue right there, right? That's the problem, is that the people in the quote unquote Middle East, these people have the history. They know the history. And so as long as the people that's over in that land right now are over there and they're not the indigenous people there, they're not the original people from that land, and in the Middle East, the quote unquote Middle Eastern, they know this. So they have as much right to that land as anybody else. If you're going to go over there and claim to be somebody you're not, what you claim to be the Jews and you're not, and you're going to use that to claim that land, we have as much right to that land as you do. Because you're not the people, we're not the people. So as long as y'all gonna be over there, we can be over there. And so this is really what the conflict is about. And he's making this argument. Oh, you know, the original people, they've been there, they haven't. And we're gonna get into it. But just man, he's slick with the tongue. But just check it out. Just check it out. Here we go.
A land that has direct ties to the Jewish people.
I just want to know if this is a universal principle. I guess that's what I'm getting at. Because if it's not, then it's meaningless to me. Because as a Christian, I believe in universal principles. Something is right for everyone, or it's wrong for everyone. We don't believe in special cases.
But here's the question. If the Jews didn't have this land, would the Jews have a right to any land?
I don't know. I'm not attacking the Jews. I'm asking if this applies to every people in every nation. Does every nation have the same right to its own homeland, to its own physical land, that you say Israel does?
I feel like we're in a rabbit hole here.
No, I think it's a very straightforward question.
No, but
does that right extend to other countries other than Israel?
But the most important thing that is going on in our culture right now is whether or not the people that are yelling in the streets from the river to the sea, whether that's a legitimate point of view to say that there should not be a Jewish homeland. There should not be a Jewish state.
You'll never hear me say
period.
that. I just want to know.
I know you haven't said it, but that's the argument.
It's one of the arguments going on globally. And the United States, excuse me, has a pretty narrow view, I would say, in our media culture, of what's happening around the world. There are plenty of countries having this debate. Stonehenge is a lot older than the first temple in Israel. And it was built by the same people who live there now. It's the same people. And they are being pushed off their island and outnumbered by people from other places. And so in Great Britain, in Ireland, which is also a country with a nation of people, a race, if you will, that is being displaced, replaced.
Who are they being replaced by?
Immigrants.
Okay.
From other places.
I just wanted to clarify because I was one of the...
Well, just as a demographic matter, it's just like you can look at the numbers. It's not controversial. Just look at the numbers. There'll be a minority in their country. And their people have been there longer than Jews have been in Israel. Yeah. And so they're having this debate too. That's all I'm saying. And lots of places are having this debate.
Sure.
So does that principle apply to everyone, or is it specific just to Israel?
I think it applies specifically to Israel. It applies to anyone who can prove that they have some connection to the land and connection to the history and connection to international law. But Israel, I think, does have an extraordinary...
Up international law? So if, again...
Well, no, but let me finish this,
yes,
Tucker, because here's the point. We're talking about Christian Zionism. The idea that as a Christian, I believe in both the Old and the New Testament. Why wouldn't I? I'm a person of the book. There are 80 million evangelical Christians in the United States. What makes us who we are is our adherence to the Scripture, our belief that the Bible, all of it, not part of it, but all of it, is the Word of the living God.
Yeah.
So if I believe in the Old and the New Testament, I do believe that there is a very specific call to the Jewish people that started with Abraham. And he called them out of what is now modern-day Iraq, said, come where I send you. He came. This is the land. Genesis 12:3, he says, I will bless those who bless you, curse those who curse you. In Genesis 17, he looks out at the world, he says, look, and this is where I'm giving you the land.
I think
And
it's
since that time, there have been people living in this land
right.
connected to that.
Now he's invoking the Bible, right? Genesis, God's gonna bless those who bless Israel and curse those who curse Israel. And this land was given to Abraham. And so my question is, if you find out that the people of the book, the seed of Abraham, who the promise went to, because when you say the children of Abraham, and this is another issue because you have Ishmael, right? So the majority of the so-called Arabs today are from the seed of Ishmael, right? That's the seed of Abraham. Ishmael was Abraham's oldest son, but the promise that the Most High made to Abraham went through Isaac. Isaac had a son, Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons, which became the 12 tribes of Israel. So if this promise went through them, so what he's saying, those who bless, he was going to bless those who bless them and curse those who curse them. This was given to the sons of Jacob. And if you find out, or if the world finds out, because so many people, so many Christians adhere to this, they send millions of dollars to Israel every year because they claim they believe that they're supporting God's people. Well, if you find out that God's people look like me, would you still have that same mentality? Would you still support us? Would you give us the money to go to our homeland, to establish ourselves? Would you use your military might to back us up? See, it all changes when it's us. But as long as they can claim it's something different, so they want to invoke the Bible. But this is interesting because it makes so much sense as long as the skin tone matches his, that the Bible says these are the people and we're supposed to support these people and all the things. But when it's us, it don't make so much sense. You had a group of people under a guy named Ben-Ami that went over to Israel, I want to say the 70s, 60s, 70s, or something like that. I forget how long ago. And they put them in Dimona, next to a nuclear plant, right? They couldn't deny them based on what he just said. Anybody who can prove a connection to Israel can be there. Because then you got the Ethiopian Jews, which I think he's going to mention at some point if he hasn't already. So you got people that look like us that have made, that made this claim, that invoked what he just said, right? We have right to this land. This is our people too. We're of this people, right? So, and the other thing is because all the people that quote unquote Israelis, they're all converts. They converted. And so when you understand that being a Jew is a bloodline thing, you're born, Chinese or you're not. You're born Asian. You're born whatever your bloodline is. So you can't convert into a people. You can't convert it into a nationality, right? So they try to relegate it to a religion when it's convenient, and then it becomes a nationality when it's convenient. But when they have to prove the nationality, then they say, well, as long as you are practicing you practice Judaism, then you can be these people. Other than that, it's about ethnicity, it's about bloodline. When they don't have to prove that, then they can say the Palestinians got to go. So this is the game they play, but when it comes to us, when it's revealed that we're those people, are you going to have that same mentality towards us? That's the question. But let's get back to the interview. This is going to get good. All right, so here we go. Let's get back to it.
That moment of history. So there is a historical connection that is unbroken.
You've said that, and I want to ask you what that means a little more specifically, if that's okay. But first, let me just say that you could say the same thing of Britons who've been there in their land longer.
Is anybody trying to tell the Brits they can't live there anymore?
No, what's happening is...
But they are saying that to the Jews.
Oh, okay. But I just wonder if you would extend the same sympathy or the same principle. You seem like this is... You think I'm trying to trap you? I'm not. I'm at all trying to trap you. It'd be as simple as saying... Native Britons have the same...
I got no problem with the native Brits having their land.
Having the right to their land.
But my point is, I don't know that there is a biblical connection for the Brits.
Okay.
But I would say...
So that's what it comes down to.
Take that off the table, and I think there's still a basis for the Jews having this little bitty strip of real estate.
I'm not even arguing with you. I'm just trying to, I'm just trying to understand what it is that you're saying, because it's not obvious to me, and maybe it's an IQ problem, but I'm having trouble understanding this. But let me just go back to just clarify one thing.
Okay.
You've brought up international law at least twice, maybe three times, as a basis for Israel's legitimacy. If Israel was out of compliance with international law, whatever that is, would it be less legitimate?
Depends on if the law and the way it's applied is legitimate. There are some applications of so-called international law that are not legitimate.
I agree.
Look at the ICC or the ICJ.
I agree.
Utterly ridiculous. One of the reasons I'm so grateful President Trump and Secretary Rubio are pushing hard, trying to get rid of the ICC and the ICJ, is because they have become rogue organizations that are no longer really about an equal application of law and justice.
I don't know enough about it to say if that's true or not. But I'm interested that you yourself appealed to international law as a basis of Israel's
Well, what I'm looking
legitimacy.
at is the whole of the last 100 years.
The Balfour Declaration is not exactly international law, by the way. It was a letter, I think.
It was maybe not law, but it was a declaration. It was an assumption and a declaration that was done by Lord Balfour in Great Britain. At that time, this land was under the British mandate, and he said the Jews should have the land that was theirs from 3,800 years ago. It was simple as that.
Right. And I'm not debating that. I'm just... It was not international law. It was a colonial power saying, okay,
but then
here's how
later
we're
it
going to
was
divide up the
international
world
law
after
under the League of
fall
Nations, under
Ottoman
the
Empire.
United Nations. And then because of the victories that Israel had against those who tried to annihilate them, and it wasn't just that they were trying to take a little piece of their land, they tried to annihilate them.
Okay.
And there is still to this day the shouts of from the river to the sea. And Tucker, that means only one thing, not the shrinking of Israel, but the annihilation of Israel.
I don't think
That's different.
I don't think you can say that you know what it means, actually, because you don't know what's in people's hearts. So why don't we just deal with the facts? Maybe some people mean it.
I know it's
to
in their
mean that.
mouths. I know it's in their minds.
But I'm not, look, you'll never hear me say that. What you will hear me say is I'm confused by what the definitions are. So let's go through this. You've appealed to Genesis. Genesis 15 says it's Abram, it's pre-Abraham, it's Abram, receives from God the news that his descendants will inherit the land. And you tell me as the theologian if I'm getting this wrong, but from the Euphrates to the Nile. I think that's right. And that would include like basically the entire Middle East. That would be the Levant. So that would be Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. It would also be big parts of Saudi Arabia and Iraq. It would be,
I'm not sure it would go that far. I mean, it would be a big piece of land, but here's the point.
It would be a lot of places that are now countries.
But this particular area that we're talking about now, Israel, is a land that God gave through Abraham to a people that he chose. It was a people, a place, and a purpose. We can look at it that way. Christian Zionism, I want to go back because that's where we started
I'm
on
not
this.
going to let you off on this because
All right, yeah. So I gotta say this too, right? So when he talks about the land, the borders that's promised to Abraham from the Euphrates to Egypt, to the Nile River, and the whole, basically, like you said, the whole entire Middle East. And the significance of that is this: is because in 1948, when they made Israel a state, a lot of people claim that was prophecy being fulfilled, because in the Bible it's prophesied that the Most High would bring Israel back into Jerusalem and establish Israel as a dominant nation. And so people look at what's happening there and say that's prophecy being fulfilled. However, if that was the case, then they would have all that land that they don't have. They just have just a strip, right? And so I believe what Tucker is also alluding to is he's trying to understand is if Israel is claiming that they have a right to that land because of what the Bible says, then that means they also believe that they have a right to all that land and eventually have every intention on taking it. So you see, Mike Huckabee doesn't want to really address that question. He's dancing around. He don't want to acknowledge that. But that's the reason why he keeps going there about the borders. And if you're claiming that Israel has the right to the land because of the Bible, because if you're going by the Bible, then we have a much bigger issue, because there's going to be a war if they plan to take all that land. But they don't have that land because they are not the people, and this is not the fulfillment of the prophecy written of in the scriptures. right? Also, when you go to Isaiah 2, it tells you when the Most High reestablishes Israel that man will study war no more. They're going to take all the weapons, be beaten into plow hooks and pruning hooks. So there's not going to be war. And since Israel is in, as a matter of fact, Israel right now, today, 2026, what is this, February 24th, 2026, they're fighting a war on 7 different fronts, according to Israel. They got 7 fronts they're fighting a war on right now. So how does that fit prophecy? They can't be. They don't fit prophecy. So we're gonna pick up here. Let's keep going here, and let's just get it.
Because you have said it 3 times that God gave this land to this people, and so it is entirely fair for me, with respect, to ask, what land are you talking about? Because I just read Genesis 15, as I have many times, and that land, I think it says, from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is, once again, basically the entire Middle East. So God gave that land to his people, the Jews, or he didn't. You're saying he did. What does that mean? Does Israel have the right to that land? Because you're appealing to Genesis.
Yeah.
You're saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all. But I don't think that's what we're talking about here today.
What would be fine? Well, it's exactly what we're talking about today.
But here's what I don't think
you think it would be fine if the state of Israel took over all of Jordan?
They don't want to take it over. They're not asking to take it over.
But you're saying that the reason that Israel is legitimate, has this inherent right to exist, is in part because God gave it to his people. And I am going to the same Bible that you're referring to and noticing that that is a huge piece of land.
Now, keep in mind that Mike Huckabee is the U.S. ambassador to Israel. He's supposed to be representing America. He's supposed to have the American interest in mind, right? And so, but you can clearly see in this interview that he has more respect and intention on serving Israel and representing Israel than he does America. That's what you can see from this interview. So I just wanted to point that out as well.
So if God gave them that land, then they have a right to take it now by your definition, unless I'm missing something completely.
Well, I think you're missing something, because they're not asking to go back to take all of that, but they are asking to at least take the land that they now occupy, they now live in, they now own legitimately, and it is a safe haven for them.
Well, but may I ask, though, because you're explaining what Christian Zionism is and your theological beliefs. And you think you just said it would be fine with you if the state of Israel took all of Jordan, all of Syria, all of Lebanon.
That's really not exactly what I'm trying to say.
I'm asking,
Tucker.
Is that what you said? I thought that's what you just said.
It was somewhat of a hyperbolic statement in that, if that's what you feel like that we're talking about, but it isn't. We're talking about this land that Israel, the state of Israel, now lives in and wants to have peace in. They're not trying to take over Jordan. They're not trying to take over Syria. They're not trying to take over Iraq or anywhere else. But they do want to protect
Lebanon?
their people. No, they're not trying to take over Lebanon.
But you're saying that as a religious man, as a Christian Zionist, you agree with a lot of religious communities here in Israel that the justification for this country is theological. It's a contract between God and his people. And I'm telling you that that contract includes a tract of land that is much larger than the current nation state.
So you may be a bigger Zionist than even the Jews are that live in Israel.
I'm trying to understand the implications of your theology for geopolitics, because you're saying that the present government of Israel has a moral right to take over what are now other people's countries.
No, I didn't say that, Tucker.
Then what are you saying?
I'm simply saying that the people who live in Israel, I think, have a right to have security, have safety. They have a right to be able to live in this land that they have a connection to for 38
I told myself when I said a prayer that I would not get annoyed, but as someone who is, the father of daughters, when I see child molesters hiding in Israel and escaping American justice, I think I have a right to safety in my country too. So you can understand that I think most people feel they have a right to safety. I do think Israel has a right to safety, and I hope that for them, and I'm sincere, but I'm an American, and I have a right to safety in my country too.
Of course you do.
Agree? And I think, but I just want to get to this point. If Israel were to say, God gave us in Genesis 15, all of Lebanon, all of Syria, all the way up to Iraq, would that be legitimate in your view?
I don't think in this particular day and time they're asking for it.
Would it be legitimate?
I'm not sure that it would be.
Why? Because you just said that God gave it to them.
Because I think that there is an understanding that the people of Israel today, now if they end up getting attacked by all these places and they win that war and they take that land, then okay, that's a whole nother discussion. But you and I started out. We started talking about something simple: Christian Zionism.
But it turns out it's
and
not
now
simple because I don't. The core of Christian Zionism, you said, and I'm quoting you, is the understanding, the belief, the theological understanding that Jews have a moral and legal. We went through the legal,
biblical,
moral deriving from.
All right, yeah, you got to peep the language there, right? So he says if Israel gets attacked or get into a war and they win that war and they take that land, then okay, they got it legitimately, right? So we're talking about the land of Palestine, I believe, and those people are not in a position to win a war. And it would be so simple and so easy for the Israelis to stage an attack, blow up, a building, a trash can, and say, oh, they bombed us, and then use that as a precursor to go in there and take more land, which they're taking the land anyway. That's going to happen. They're doing that. And he's saying if a war starts, a fight starts, and they win the war, then they legitimately own the land. And so it's simply justifying what they're doing. It's a blueprint. I'm telling you.
From the biblical, from the promises in our Bible, which we share with the Jewish people, the first part of it, the Old Testament, that it derives from God's promise to the Jews. And so I have two questions. What are the borders of that? And who are those people in 2026? And you're not the first person I've asked, but you're the most reasonable, most gentle, most theologically informed person. So I'm really hoping for an answer.
Yeah.
The first question was the borders. I can't get an answer.
Yeah.
Those borders are. So I'm going to give up. But the second question is every bit as pressing, which is who are the people? Who are the modern? Yes. Who are the descendants? So we know, and I believe, and I agree with you as a Christian, that God promised this land from modern day Iraq to modern day Egypt to this people, the Jews, to Abram's, actually not to Abram's descendants, as it says in Genesis 15. Who are his descendants now, and how do we know who they are?
I think they're the Jews, and we know who they are because they've always been a Jewish people. There has been an unbroken line of Jewish people, and they've lived in this land for 3,800 years. Sometimes not very many of them, because they were chased out all over the world. They were hunted down. They were almost annihilated during the Holocaust. They came back. To this day, Tucker, they represent, you know how many Jews there are in the whole world?
Please,
No,
I understand. But first of all, the greatest genocide of Jews no one ever mentions was by the Romans, where they were literally banned from Jerusalem for 500 years.
Yeah, of course.
And it's all awful. And I'm opposed to all of that. I'm opposed to mass killing of anybody, period. I'm opposed to
hear
killing.
you say that.
I mean it.
Yeah.
And I hope we
believe
can agree
that.
on that.
I believe that.
My question is, and it's not a bumper sticker answer, it's a sincere answer, how do we know? Because what you're saying is that certain people have a title to a highly contested region. They own it in some deep sense. So I think it's fair to ask, who are they and how do we know? So the current prime minister's ancestors weren't from here within recorded history. He has no deed. Bibi Netanyahu, on one side, his family's from Poland. They're from Eastern Europe. So how do we know that he has a connection to the people who God promised the land to, Abram's descendants? How do we know that?
Well, if you take the genealogies that come not only from the Old but the New Testament, you see that there is a historical connection through the entirety of the Old and the New Testament that details the Jewish connection to this land.
Does that include Bibi's family? How do we know that if his family...
See, that's it right there. And that's where he's lying. He's just flat out lying. You know, the historical connection. There is no historical connection. And that's what that book, The 13th Tribe, is about. If it's only 12 tribes of Israel and the people that's in Israel today cannot trace their lineage to any of those 12 tribes, then there must be a 13th tribe if they're claiming to be Jews. So he says, well, there's a historical. There is no historical record. That's what Tucker is pointing out. The president or the prime minister of Israel is Polish. What does that have to do with being a Jew? And he's saying, well, no, I mean, they this and they that, and they can trace that. They can't. And that's the whole point. Tucker's gonna bring it home. But this is what people have to understand. People don't understand what's going on here. This situation in Israel and how it's affecting the rest of the world and these wars. This stuff goes way back. This was prophesied through the scripture. This is another reason why we know the Bible is what it claims to be, the Word of God, because it told us this was going to happen 3,800 years ago. It told us this was going to happen. And it's happening, just like the Bible said. It's unfolding, just like the Bible said it would. And this is how we're able to navigate and see what's going on in today's climate, today's world, and be prepared for it. And not be surprised and not be shocked and not be misled by all the false narratives and all the stuff. Wars and rumors of wars. We're in that time. And this is what the scripture talk about. And because we understand scripture, because we read scripture, then we can know who is not the people, who is not who they claim to be. It makes it more clear. When you know what's true, and you know the truth, it's easy to spot what's false. Because I know the truth, it's easy for me to spot a lie. And so watch this dude just lie so confidently and so boldly based on people's ignorance. But everybody not ignorant. Tucker know a little bit more. He know too much to let that just slide. So this is why, and this is the reason why I got this interview, because this is good, because he's gonna get into it, man, and it's in a public thing. So this is it's getting good. Now this is the part I really wanted to get to. So here we go.
They were scattered.
But how do we know it's the same people? Why is that crazy? If you say to me,
if they speak the same language, if they worship the same God, if they follow the same Bible, if they follow the same cultures and traditions, and they always pray next year in Jerusalem, and they pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and they pray facing toward Jerusalem, does that not give you a little bit of a clue as to who they are?
Let's go through those things, because I would like to have a rational this is a conversation I've wanted. Bless you.
Now, see, anybody can do that. I do that. So by his definition, I should be over there on the land, getting free health care, benefiting from all this money that America sends to Israel, because I keep the holy days, I keep the laws, I pray towards Jerusalem, the feast days in the scriptures. So by his definition, there's no way I shouldn't be able to just walk over there and say, hey, yeah, I'm a Jew. Right? So now, and just look how he switched it up. And I told y'all this earlier, right? Before he was saying that they have the history. And so then Tucker says, well, his parents come from Poland. Well, they keep the culture. They read the Bible. They keep Torah. They pray towards Jerusalem. They keep the feast days. They do this. Anybody can just pick up a Bible and read it and start doing that. So is it heritage or is it religion? And it's how you see how he just changed it up at his discretion when it's beneficial, right? So this is Tucker about to put the heat on him. Let's get into it.
Thank you for doing this. Let's just go through those things.
Okay.
So one of the things I admire most about Israel is they resurrected a dead language in 1948. Good for them.
Well, they really didn't resurrect it. It was existent.
Okay, that's a compliment. I'm not slighting.
No. But it is the first time in all of human history that a language has survived through this length of time. It's I would call it, you might not, but I would call it a miracle. One of many that you can attribute to this
I think it's wonderful as someone who loves language. Netanyahu's parents did not speak Hebrew. Okay, they didn't live in this region. Netanyahu, the founders of this country, were mostly secular. Some of them were avowed atheists. They were not praying for the peace of Jerusalem. They weren't praying at all because they didn't believe in God. There's no genealogy linking their families to the people of this land 3,000 years ago. They're not. So how do we know, since they didn't share a language, they didn't share a religion, they had no religion whatsoever, how do we know that they had a right to come here from Eastern Europe and
but they were scattered.
Take the land?
They were scattered to Eastern Europe. They were scattered all over the world. There were many in Ethiopia. They were in Russia. They were in Poland. They were throughout Asia. Jews were all over the place, but they were still Jews. But they were still Jews.
Okay,
That's
so then
what
let
made
me
them
get to the
unique.
nub of the question, since again,
I got to interrupt one more time, and I want to make sure I was correct about this. But he said that they brought back a dead language. That in itself is a miracle. They brought back a dead language. Understand that the people in Israel today speak Yiddish. What is Yiddish? Yiddish, historically Judeo-German or Jewish German, a West Germanic language historically spoken by Ashkenazi Jews. It originated in the Holy Roman Empire during the Middle Ages and provided the Ashkenazi community with a vernacular based on High German fused with elements taken from Hebrew and some extent Aramaic. So they did not revise a dead language. These people do not speak the same Aramaic and Hebrew that the Jews spoke before 70 AD. Don't. So that's another lie. They're lying in order to take claim to that land. And this is getting exposed. This is getting exposed on this platform, man. This is this sweet right here, man. I'm enjoying this. I hope y'all enjoying this. Let's get back to
a lot is at stake, a lot of money is at stake. Land is very valuable. Israel has a lot of resources. By the way, if you're accused of a crime, you can hide here. That's a pretty good passport to have. It's a good thing, right? So who's entitled to it? I don't understand, and you're very discouraged in the United States from asking this question for some reason. It's a totally rational
I'm not
question.
discouraged.
No, you're not discouraging
Yeah.
me. Others do. You're like the only person I can have this conversation with. Everyone else will be like, shut up, Nazi. It's a foundational question. Are you speaking of an ethnic group or a religious group?
Well, I think you're looking at, for many people, it is religious. There are people who may not have a deep religious connection to Judaism, but they're still Jews.
Okay, so it's an ethnic category.
It is ethnic, but it is also religious. It is rooted in religion. You can't take it out of it. Now, that means
then
there are
how
some people,
can an atheist...
Well, I will tell you this. There are some people who say, I'm Christian. They never go to church. They never pray. They never read their Bible. They don't tithe.
But they're not entitled to citizenship on the basis of that.
Well,
they're
but
not
I'm saying
entitled
that
to...
they still call themselves Christian,
Of course.
even though they identify in that way.
Here's the difference. You're saying that people who have this identification have a deed to a huge chunk of land on the Mediterranean, okay? So there's, it's a right. You keep telling me it's a right. And so it's totally fair to say, if you come to my house and say, I've got the title to your house, I get to ask, may I see it? Where'd you get it? And that's exactly what happened here. People from Europe, Eastern Europe came here, in a lot of cases atheists, and kicked out a lot of people who lived here.
Land.
Well, but
They did not just throw people out.
They bought a lot of land. There's no question about that.
They did buy a lot of land.
But they
The
also,
whole
in
idea of Zionist
1948,
movement
kicked out a lot of people.
in the war.
Oh, it was a war. I agree.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
want to
Okay.
relitigate the history. I'm just saying it's a fact.
Okay.
Including a lot of Christians wound up fleeing, and they lost their homes, and they've never been allowed back. And all of this was justified on the basis of this identity that is the ticket to the right that you keep referring to. So my question is very simple. I'm going to wait patiently for an answer. Does this right derive from religious affiliation or from genetics?
And I would say it's both. But I would also say that when you said the Christians were kicked out, Tucker, Christianity is growing in Israel.
Okay, but
And there is a big lie that goes out there. But no, let me finish this, because I keep hearing that
Right.
Christians are really not treated well in Israel. That's a lie.
Well, there are lots
It
of
is a
different.
lie.
There are lots of different.
There were 34,000 Christians in Israel in 1948. There are 184,000 Christians here today.
And by Israel, what are you counting?
You talking about the land?
What territory are you counting?
I'm talking about
Israel proper? Or are you counting
talking about Israel
the West
proper.
Bank as well and Gaza? I mean, what do you, when you say Israel, those numbers apply to what landmass?
It would be in Israel proper.
Okay.
There are 184,000. Now, I'll tell you where Christians are not doing very well. They're not doing very well in the Muslim-controlled countries. There's almost no Christians in Qatar, for example, except those who live in the Christian ghetto, who are the service workers.
I'm sorry.
can't
Look,
pray.
I don't want to argue with you. There are many more Christians in Qatar than there are in Israel.
That's not true.
what it actually is true. And I refer you to Wikipedia, Mr. Ambassador.
Wikipedia,
I refer you to the government of Qatar, the government of Israel. These are knowable facts. Like I'm
in Jordan,
by the way,
numbers are down. In Syria, the numbers are down. In Lebanon, the numbers are down. I'm just telling you that
about twice as many Christians.
But they live in the enclave. They are not native Qataris.
Okay, we're mixing so many different categories here. I'm just saying I get things wrong all the time. You've just gotten something wrong, and I think it's important to acknowledge it. There are many more Christians in Qatar than there are in Israel. Fact.
How many?
Now you caught me. I don't know. I can look at my phone, but I was just there, and there are many more. Like whatever. But I just want to get to the point that forms the basis of this whole conversation, which is who has a right to the land.
Yeah.
And you said it's a mixture of religion and ethnicity. Because as I noted, and you agree, many of the founders, maybe the majority of the founders of modern Israel, did not believe in God at all. So they were not religious Jews. They weren't religious at all. They were atheists. They said they were atheists. I believe them. So that suggests it's ethnic. But it's also true, as you well know, because there's a famous court case about this, that ethnic Jews who convert to Christianity do not have the right of return. That was settled by the Israeli Supreme Court. I'm very confused. So that would suggest it's not ethnicity, because you invalidate your Jewishness by converting to Christianity?
There are a number of Messianic Jews who live in Israel.
Okay.
Who are here.
I'm aware of
it's
I'm
a
aware of
significant
that
number.
But you're not contesting what I'm saying, because it's a very famous court case.
The right of return has to do with your mother, your grandmother. It has to do with family ties.
It's ethnic.
There's a lot of, sure, ethnicity is a big part of the right of return.
Great.
To make aliyah, to come to Israel, to live here.
Then if both of your parents are Jewish and you have an ethnic right to the land, you are one of Abram's descendants, but you convert to Christianity, how is it you don't have the right to return? I'm totally confused.
But I know a number of people who have returned as Christians, but have Jewish history.
Are you saying that Jews who convert to Christianity have a right, a legal right to return? Because I
know that they do. Whether, when you say, do they have a right to return? Do they prove?
It's a legal category, as in any government.
Which is by their family history, their grandmother, their mother, and there are many aspects of that.
I've read it. I think,
but I know that these are people who are Christian, and they came here, made aliyah. They had Jewish blood, Jewish history. They were Christian, Messianic, but they came here, and they were welcomed here.
And they were given full legal rights.
Absolutely.
And a passport.
Yeah.
So clearly, it's not true that you invalidate your right of return by converting to Christianity. That's just false.
I'm not aware of that. I know that there are a number of Christians here. I go to church with Christians every week here.
Of course. And but do you have a right to come and say, I am an ethnic Jew, even though I practice Christianity, therefore I have every bit as much right to move into a settlement in the West Bank or into East Jerusalem or anywhere I want, Galilee, anywhere, because I'm returning to the land of my forefathers. I have a legal right in the state of Israel, even though I've converted to Christianity. You're saying that's true?
I'm saying I know people who've done it. Now, can I tell you what the law specifically is? I'm not sure.
Well, it's really
I'm a Christian. I don't have any Jewish roots, so therefore I cannot quote you the law. If you want me to do that, I'll look at it.
Well, it really matters because you're saying, in fact, people in the United States are being called anti-Semites, a lot of them, including me, because they somehow don't believe that Israel has a right to this land.
Do you think Israel has a right to this land?
No, you haven't defined what the land is, and you haven't defined who Israel is. So I really don't know.
It is the land they're living in now, the borders that they have.
The borders are moving. The borders have moved in the last year.
What do you mean the borders have moved?
Well, they are the 1967 borders. I'm including, the
East
West
Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria.
What are the borders of Judea and Samaria?
Well, you basically take the Jordan River, and it's west of the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, to the Lebanon border. And Israel did have control of the Sinai. They gave that to Egypt. They had control of it.
Right.
They gave it away in 1979 in the peace agreement.
But, okay.
So
whatever you call it, the land that was taken from Jordan in 1967, you call it Judea and Samaria. There's a significance to that I don't fully understand. I'm not against it.
It's the biblical
know what it's the biblical.
Terms. 80% of the Bible happened in Judea and Samaria.
But we've
That's why
also established that the Bible gives Jews the right to occupy the land from the Nile to the Euphrates. So I'm very confused by why we've shrunk the land and why we're
Israel has shrunk the land. They have made that decision. That's why they gave away Gaza. They gave away the Sinai.
Now's the part
They've
for the
given away
real
a lot of
question.
things.
Abram's descendants are the ones who have the right to have this land, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we do genetic testing on everybody in the land and find out who Abram's descendants are? It's really simple. We've cracked the human genome. We can do.
All right, yeah, we got to back it up. We got now. This is the meat and potatoes right here. We're about to get into, but I want to back up. We talk about this picture he's trying to paint of Israel, right? It's how Christian tolerant they are, right? But what Tucker was getting to is that if a person converts to Christianity, then they kind of lose their right as an Israeli or as they claim to that land. But going back to, he's saying how, he's a Christian and Christians this and Christians that, and they're going to get into it later on, but they spit on Christians in Israel. It's a thing, like they do that. Also, they have a lot of atheists there in Israel, and the official religion does not believe in who the world knows as Jesus. They don't ascribe to that. There are Messianic Jews, but the official religion and the government, they don't believe in Jesus. And a lot of Christians don't know that. A lot of Christians think that they're supporting God's people by sending money to Israel and backing Israel or whatever, not knowing that these people blaspheme the name of Christ. They in the Talmud, it says some wild stuff about Jesus and Mary. And so people got to understand who they're dealing with and what these people really believe. But I want to give you some facts. He talked about this guy's the ambassador of America to Israel. He don't know the laws. So I'm going to give you some laws right quick. I'm just going to go through the laws and I'll post these. In Israel, LGBTQ plus rights are protected by law. I'm just going to go through some laws here for the LGBT. Understanding that Israel, I believe, is one of the most, gay-friendly nations in the world. I think is what it said. 1963, Israeli courts ruled that sodomy laws should not apply to consenting adults in private. 1988, Israel abolishes the decade-old ban on sodomy of any kind. 1992, legislation bars discrimination against LGBTQ plus individuals in the workplace. 1993, the Israeli army adopts a policy of allowing openly LGBTQ plus soldiers to serve in any capacity. 1994, the Israeli Supreme Court rules in favor of granting spousal benefits to same-sex couples. This 94. 1997, the Israeli defense minister announced that the same-sex partners would be recognized as family members by the Defense Department. The Israeli High Court's rule against censoring an educational TV program for teens about homosexuality. So they started grooming in 1997 on through television. 2000, the Knesset, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, lowers the legal age of consent for same-sex relations from 18 to 16. And the Israeli Supreme Court rules that lesbians can officially become adoptive mothers of their partner's children. So the age of consent was lowered to 16 for homosexuals. So now grown men can now deal with 16-year-old boys. Grown women can now deal with 16-year-old girls, and then everything in between that, the B, the T, the Q, the plus, all that, 16 now. That was 2000. 2004, Israeli courts rule LGBTQ plus couples qualify for common law marriage, and LGBTQ plus couples qualify for full inheritance rights. So, see, what it seems like to me is that the LGBTQ plus community that's fighting for all these rights in America, they got them in Israel first, and now they're saying, well, and they're using that as the blueprint to get it over here in America, right? 2006, Israel recognizes same-sex marriage marriage is performed abroad. So now you can go, if you can come to America or somewhere else and get married, then you can go to Israel and they're going to recognize you as a married couple. This is Israel. This is the people who majority of Christian churches support in America. From America, they send money, they support them. A lot of people don't know this. This is what's going on over there. 2014. Israel passes a law protecting students from discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. 2015. So they've been way ahead of the curve with this LGBTQ rights and the movement. They've been way ahead on the movement. 2015. Transgender Israelis can change their legal gender without undergoing surgery. So they can just say they're a woman without even having to go through surgery. So this is what they're trying to get in America. They get their blueprint from Israel. 2021, they still changing laws. Israel ends restrictions on blood donations from gay and bisexual men. And I think the reason why you had blood restriction before because they were more prone to having HIV and AIDS and stuff like that. I don't know that for sure, but that's my assumption. So now you can get blood from homosexual and bisexual men. Let's see where we at. 2022. Former health minister Nitzan Horowitz, Israel's first openly gay party leader, issues a directive to ban conversion therapy. Israel lifts restrictions on surgery for gay and trans couples and single men. So they way ahead of the curve. And then 2023 is the last one I got here. Israeli courts give same-sex couples the right to adopt children. All right? And then this is a PDF I have. It's so much more information. I mean, this thing is that was only one page. But they got the organization. Anyway, I'll scroll through it on the screen. You guys will see it. But yeah, so this is what's going on over there, right? They don't respect Christians. A lot of them don't even believe in God. They don't respect Jesus as the Messiah. They claim in their Talmud, they claim that he's in hell up to his eyeballs in human excrement, right? They say that his mother was a whore. That's what they say in their Talmud, right? Basically, they say she fornicated, and that's how she got pregnant with Christ. So this is what they believe. And he's trying to paint this picture as though these people are somehow a righteous nation or something like that. So I'm going to back it up a little bit, and we're going to get to it. We're going to back up because now he's about to press him about dealing with Israel from a genetic standpoint. He's about to get into this, right? So because we live in a time now where we can prove genetics. It don't have to be this mystery. It don't have to be this back and forth. We can prove genetics. So that's what he's saying. Well, look, why not just do that? Let's just prove genetics and call it a day. And now watch how he put on his skates. Watch how he try to avoid this one. This is the meat and potatoes of it. Let's get to it.
In the peace agreement.
But okay.
So
whatever you call it, the land that was taken from Jordan in 1967, you call it Judea and Samaria. There's a significance to that I don't fully understand. I'm not against it.
It's the biblical.
It's the biblical.
Terms. 80% of the Bible happened in Judea and Samaria.
But we've also established that the Bible gives Jews the right to occupy the land from the Nile to the Euphrates. So I'm very confused by why we've shrunk the land and why we're
Israel has shrunk the land. They have made that decision. Okay. That's why they gave away Gaza. They gave away the Sinai.
Now's the part
They've
for
given
the real
away a
question.
lot of things.
Abram's descendants are the ones who have the right to have this land, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we do genetic testing on everybody in the land and find out who Abram's descendants are? It's really simple. We've cracked the human genome. We can do that. Why don't we do that? Would you be against doing that?
I have no idea what that would prove. I mean, maybe it would be.
What do you mean? It would prove who Abram's descendants are and who has a right to live here and who doesn't, according to the theology that you yourself just explained. And so I'm very confused as to why we don't do that. If you believe the theology that you've just explained to me.
Would we do that all over the world?
Well,
and everybody
this is the only country in the world that you've said has this covenant with God, that this people have a moral and legal right to the land.
What about people who convert to Judaism? Would they have a right?
Well, you've just said.
I mean,
that
there are
it's
converts
not
to Judaism, so
you just told
they
me
can make Aliyah. They may not have.
You've just
DNA.
told me that it doesn't matter. You told me moments ago, I'm trying to keep track,
Okay.
that it doesn't matter whether or not you believe in God or whether or not you practice Torah Judaism or rabbinic Judaism, which is something else that I don't even know if we should, I don't even know what that means. But it doesn't matter whether you're, quote, a religious Jew or not. What matters is that you are part of the Jewish people to whom God gave this land that extends from the Nile to the Euphrates. And so if you believe that, wouldn't you want to know with a burning passion who those people are? And because of science, we can now know who those people are. So why aren't we finding out?
I guess you could propose a DNA test for everybody who comes here, everybody who lives here. But the point
I'm comfortable with secular nation states where none of this is done on the basis of blood. I'm uncomfortable with that. I'll just say that.
But there are people who may not have bloodlines, but who have converted to Judaism. Are they going to be able to live here? Are you going to kick them out?
By your standards, they can't live here.
No,
because you just told
said.
me
No.
that they have a right to live here because God gave them the land because they're the descendants of Abram.
They're the descendants of Abraham. But if they're the spiritual descendants of Abraham and they've now decided that they're converting to Judaism, then do they have a right to live in Israel?
Well, there's a whole legal literature in Israel on that question. And
see, this is what I'm talking about. So now, if it's if there's spiritual Israel, now according to Christian theology, because the prime minister is a Baptist minister, so according to their theology, if you get baptized and you receive Christ, you become spiritual Israel. So by that same logic, that means every Christian should be able to go to Israel and stake claim to the land. But earlier he just said that, Christians can't do that. They can't. Every Christian can't just go over and stake claim to the land. So now, like I told you before, when it's convenient, now it's about being spiritual. So it's about conversion. So it's a common sense question. If we have the technology today to test everybody's DNA and prove who is of Israel and who is not, then why not just do that? Why continue fighting and going back and forth? We can prove definitive because they know they're not the people and they cannot prove definitively anything. And so this is why they don't want to touch that. We're about to wrap this up.
My understanding is that certain types of modern Judaism qualify a person and other types don't. Is that your understanding?
Honest.
I don't believe that people converted, and I could have this wrong, but I know people who've faced this personally, people. I don't believe people who've converted in a Reform synagogue have the right of return. I don't think that is, because I know people who've married into Jewish families and they find out they don't have the right of return. So that is perplexing to me.
Yeah, I know, my experience is a little different than yours. I know people who have definite Jewish connections, family relations, but now they're Christian. Some are not necessarily practicing Jews. They're not. They're more secular Jews, as you've discussed, but they come back here.
Okay, I'm not against that. I'm just wondering, since you began this conversation by asking me, did I think they had a right to come here?
Yeah, that's
and
what
my question
Zionism
was, on what basis do they have the right?
Yeah.
And you said because God granted it to them.
And I also said because that there should be a land where Jews can live in peace and safety.
And I asked you what a Jew was, and you couldn't answer it. You said it partly is religious, but doesn't have to be. It's partly genetic, but it doesn't have to be. And so that you can see why I'm confused.
I think I was very clear that being Jewish is an identification either through blood or through faith that you're Jewish. It may be that you're a blood Jew, but you don't necessarily practice Judaism, just like there are people who say they're Christian, but they don't do a thing to demonstrate what Christian
There are a lot
means.
of bad Christians, including me some of the time, a lot of the time. But I don't have a right to real estate on the basis of my claim of Christianity.
You don't have a right to real estate if you're talking about a specific parcel. But if you're talking about a land, I think what we're talking
That's
about
real
is
estate. That's all I'm,
Yeah,
all I'm saying.
and
So-
there was a designation to the family of nations of the world that there would be a Jewish homeland. Let's get to that point, because I think you've taken us on several trails here, and I'm not sure we can follow them all. But is there a reason that the Jewish people that represent, and I want to get back to this because you didn't let me finish a while ago, they represent 0.2% of the world's population. In the entirety of the world, there are about 16 million Jews total, and 8 million of them live here. The rest live mostly in New York or South Florida and a few other places.
Okay.
So this is a small population of people. They have connection to this land, historically, biblically.
Do they?
Yes, they do.
If Bibi's family, we know they lived in Eastern Europe. There's no evidence they ever lived here. He's not religious.
But
in what sense
ancestrally,
how do we know that? Do you have his family tree? No, we don't.
Do you?
He doesn't. So no one does. That's the point.
But
So how do we know that he has any connection to this land at all?
And if there has been a practice of Judaism and a connection to the language, the Bible, the land.
His ancestors didn't. He doesn't practice Judaism in any rigorous way. His ancestors didn't live here. They didn't speak the language, and there's no evidence they ever lived here. So on what basis does he have a right to be here?
Very much speaks the language. He has fought for the land. His family has fought for the land.
You're dodging a
I'm not
very
dodging.
obvious question, which is, where does this right come from? And the reason it's
given
meaningful
you that
is
answer.
because there are a lot of...
See, the president don't speak the language. Now the prime minister, I think they have right. So he don't speak the language. He said, well, he speaks the language. No, he doesn't. He speaks Yiddish. He doesn't speak Hebrew or Aramaic. He's not from there. His heritage doesn't trace back to Israel. He don't even believe in the Torah. He don't even practice religion. So by every standard that he just gave, one, you either are ethnically a Jew or you practice Judaism. The prime minister, which is like our president of Israel, he's ethnically not them. He can't trace his heritage back to Israel, to the people of Israel, and he doesn't even practice the religion. So by both of those standards, by the standards that he just laid out, that guy shouldn't even be there, let alone be the prime minister.
People in the territory that Israel controls today, particularly in the West Bank, who, through genetic testing, we can know their families have been here for thousands of years. We don't know whether they practiced Judaism, whether they were Samaritans, pre-Islam. We don't know that. A lot of them we know have been Christians for 2,000 years. They have less of a right to the land than someone whose ancestors, the only thing we know about them is they lived in Latvia or Poland. They're Eastern European. How does that work?
They're Jewish.
By what definition?
They're Jewish by their
But how do we know they have any connection
They're
to
Jewish
the Jews
by their
of the,
faith. They're
of the
Jewish
Bible?
by the connection to the language. Jewish by the connection to the Torah. Jewish
Bible.
by they're Jewish by their
But how do we know they have any
ethnicity.
connection
They're
to
Jewish
the Jews
by their
of the,
faith. They're
of the
Jewish
Bible?
by they're Jewish by their
But how do we know they have any
ethnicity.
connection
They're
to
Jewish
the Jews
by their
of the,
faith. They're
of the
Jewish
Bible?
by the connection to the language. Jewish by the connection to the Torah.
You see, he skipped that question. How do you know that they have any connection to the Jews of the Bible? I rewinded it a couple of times. It wasn't a glitch. But he's not going to address that at all. And that's the whole point. These people have no connection to the Jews of the Bible. And to hear the people, the Europeans, the European Americans saying this and claiming this is opening a whole can of worms, because we've been saying it for years, right? Since the 60s. The Israelite community has been screaming this out and shouting this out and making this known. And it gets ignored. It gets overlooked. Or they talk about the way they dress. They talk about how their delivery, which that's another conversation. However, the information is still there. And now it's starting to it's coming out of the mouth of the political pundits, of those who have the ears of the people, of the Europeans. So if they're saying it now, a lot of our people are going to start believing it. A lot of our people are going to start to believe it now that it's coming out of the mouth of a European American. But it's there it is right there. It's plain and simple. They have no claim to that land. They have no proof that they're the people of the book. Many of them don't practice the religion. That what they're doing over there in that country is so ungodly, it's unreal.
But how do we know that specifically Bibi's ancestors ever lived here? How do we know that?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
How do we know if the Prime Minister of Israel's ancestors ever lived?
Maybe I could ask you, how do we know they didn't? I mean,
Well, it's on the basis of the claim that they did that all kinds of things happen. People are displaced. There's a money flow. I mean, it's a big question. A lot hangs on this. It's not some theoretical thing like, oh, did my grandparents do this or do that? It's like, no, we have a right to be here because my ancestors were here. Okay, how do we know they were here?
Right. And so if you make the claim, you say we're this is our land, this is land belongs to our ancestors. You have to prove that that's true. You can't just make a claim and do something. And so he said, well, I can ask you how you know they're not. Well, the burden of proof is on the person that makes the claim.
I'm totally unable to process what you're trying to get at. It goes back, do Jewish people have any land on this planet that should be theirs to
I
give
feel
them?
that way about all peoples. I feel that way about Jewish peoples. I feel that way about...
Okay, then you don't mind them having
Is
this little
is there any
land,
country, let me
right?
ask you this bluntly, is there any country that European peoples have a right to exclusively?
I think they have attained their land through conquest. I mean, let's ask
Have
ourselves.
the Britons attained their land through
Romans?
conquest? No, they've always been there.
The Romans, the Greeks, we've had all these
let's
civilizations.
speak. Let's speak. Well, you could certainly say that here. The Romans controlled this, as you know, and they expelled
But they
all the
don't
Jews
anymore.
from Jerusalem. Amen. I
Yeah.
don't want them to control it.
Hope not.
I'm anti-Roman. Okay, we're on the same page.
Okay.
But my question is very simple. Is there any European peoples that possesses the same right to their land that the Jews, including people whose ancestors lived in Eastern Europe, possess here? The Britons, we know, the British people, the Scandinavian people, the Irish people, their ancestors have been there for thousands of years. That's provable.
All right, yeah, we're gonna cut it. We're gonna cut it right here, man. So yeah, you saw it right there, right? These people are fraudulent, and it's public knowledge now. It's coming out because the European Americans are now seeing that supporting Israel does not benefit America, right? So the people that's in power, they have a whole agenda, have a whole plan, and America is just a tool, an instrument in that grand scheme. And now it's becoming more and more obvious that America is being used and it's not the greatest nation on earth. And now they're waking up to this fact and they're trying to fight back. They're trying to expose this. And it's so much stuff happening right now. You go into the Epstein stuff and all that stuff. Everybody talking about Epstein. They telling you what they want you to know. There's no real exposure going on here. They put out the files and everything has been redacted. The names they don't want you to know, you don't know. The people that was buying these children, a lot of those people you don't know. All you know is what they want you to. They give you something to pacify you. But this stuff, this is still happening. And Epstein, that's a whole other topic. But we see that this got exposed on the Tucker Carlson show. I'll put the link in the description, and I want to hear your thoughts. Put your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think about this. And until next time, man, we're going to get back to it. So wisdom is the principal thing, and therefore get wisdom. But in all thy getting, get understanding. Right? We big, we believe in God. Read your Bible like the pictures say. My Bible's rated R for read. Support the channel. Get you a shirt. I got a ton of shirts. You see this shirt right here, Psalm 73:3. That's a lot of shirts. Go to www.webig.shop if you want to get a shirt. If not, if you don't want to support financially, like, share, subscribe, comments, all these things really help to get this information out, help support the channel. And I'm just going to keep on trucking, trying to get this information out to people. And I hope that you guys benefited from it. If you benefit from this, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like the channel and share the channel. Share this out. This needs to go out to people. Share this information, man. And I'll see you guys next time. With something big. Peace and blessings. Till next time.
Just a broadcast. This is family right here. Laugh. Learn and be encouraged. Let go of all the fear. Bold faith.